Now, Mohammad Marandi is a political analyst and a professor at the University of Tehran. He joins me from Iran's capital to discuss that summit. Prof, always good to speak to you. Relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, of course, are going to be very topical in the coming hours. What is Tehran hoping to get out of the summit?
It's too early to say. The Iranians have been speaking with the Saudis already, but there hasn't been a great deal of progress. Over the last few years, the Saudis refrained from discussing bilateral relations between the two countries, and after it felt that it had lost the war in Yemen, it did begin negotiations with Iran. But so far, it hasn't shown any real sign in the eyes of the Iranians to change its position. I think the expectation among the Saudis is for Iran to stop supporting the government in Sana'a, in the Yemeni capital. The Iranians recognize the government in the capital as the legitimate government, whereas the Saudi forces are backing an exiled government that the Iranians believe are carrying out genocide with Saudi help against the people of Yemen. So the Saudis want to sort of attach the issue of Yemen to bilateral relations, and Iran won't accept that. Iran says bilateral relations can be fixed, that's one file, but the issue of genocide in Yemen and what the Saudis are doing there is another file altogether that has to be solved with between the Saudis and the people of Yemen.
Do you think the holding of the summit is optimistic in terms of getting different countries together who have opposing points, who are looking at situations in the region in a very different way? Do you think this is at least a starting point where we can look at resolving some of these issues?
Well, there are issues that can be discussed, such as the water issue. Very little water is flowing into Syria and Iraq from Turkey. There are other recent issues that can be discussed. But I think a major issue is the fact that the Iraqi prime minister, under U.S. pressure, didn't invite the Syrians. And as long as Iraq is unable to make its own decisions, I think that is always going to be a major problem. And for the Iranians, the key issue that is probably not going to be discussed by many of the leaders in the room because they're influenced by the United States is the U.S. occupation. The Iraqi parliament has called on the Americans to leave. The Americans refuse to leave. The Americans continue to strike Iraqi military targets. They behave as judge, jury, and executioner. The Western media basically mimics what the U.S. military says. But the Iraqis are saying that the Americans regularly kill Iraqi soldiers that are fighting ISIS alongside the border with Iraq and Syria. So I think that until Iraq actually becomes a sovereign country, until the U.S. occupation ends, we're always going to have serious problems. So the talks will be useful, but as long as Iraq is not fully independent, I think there's a limit to how far things can go.
And of course, a country where the U.S. is pulling its troops out completely is Afghanistan. That is also likely to be on the agenda, considering what's happening there right now. And Iran is one of the countries that, of course, borders Afghanistan. How does regional security factor into what's playing out in Kabul at the moment?
Well, the withdrawal or the defeat of the United States in Afghanistan is very important for Iran. It's very good news. It's something that the Iranians welcome. Of course, the Iranians are not fans of the Taliban. The Taliban has a very dark past in the country. But Iran has been negotiating with the Taliban for 20 years now, and especially over the past 10 years, the relationship between the two countries has evolved substantially, and the Taliban's leadership has evolved. But the problem, of course, is that there are different factions. It's not a very united group. And there could be, according to the Iranians, there is already money coming in from abroad into Afghanistan to strengthen the extremists. So the Iranian position is that the Taliban has to sit down with the other groups in Afghanistan, the Tajiks, the Hazaras, the Uzbeks, the Taliban being mostly Pashtun. They have to live together and work together. And in the Shanghai conference that will be held in Tajikistan, the Iranians will be pursuing a regional networking capability to help bring the differing sides together. The Iranians will soon be a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and I think that Iran will use that opportunity.
Mohammad Marandi, great to get your take on what's happening in Iraq at the moment at that summit. Thank you very much.